Welcome to episode 44, 100 Years of Marine Corps Tankers, a channel that was created as a way to honor the lineage and history of the United States Marine Armor community. Through these interviews, the stories of Marine tankers will remain the test of time and will not be forgotten. This week features a Marine officer whose Marine Corps career began on the Yellow Footprints and then spent the next 13 years attaining the rank of Gunnery Sergeant in the Armor community, deploying a total of 4 times and serving at both Armor schools, that being Fort Knox and Fort Benning, before attaining a commissioning and subsequently graduating from Ohio State. It's a pretty awesome opportunity to be able to interview somebody that you truly call a brother. Welcome to the channel, my friend, First Lieutenant Ian Murray.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, man. It's been too long, and I'm happy to have you on here. So per SOP, you know how we start off. We're going to start off at the beginning. So there you are in 2002, stepping on the Yellow Footprints. So what led up to you wanting to become a Marine?
So my family's got quite an extensive military history, I guess, of service. So dating back to, even the French and Indian War with the British Army. But most recently, my dad kind of started kind of the tradition in the family. He's a 20-year retired Marine infantry officer. My uncle, he's a 20-year retired lieutenant colonel Cobra pilot. And then I've got, other uncles, but military service, across the board is pretty heavy in both sides of my family. But I'd say my dad, just him being a Marine, and I was around it for, the majority of my, growing up. I saw it, and it was everyday life, and I kind of knew at an early age that's what I wanted to be.
And yeah, so you did, and then you went off and obviously took the normal route from the MCRD to MCT, and then subsequently to tank school at Fort Knox in June 2003, which is a couple classes before my own. What were your early impressions of the Armor community and tanks in particular?
Well, I was actually originally supposed to be 0811. So at MCT, I was actually able to somehow, I don't know, but by the grace of God, I was able to get my MOS changed to 1812. So, which was fine by me because I knew I didn't want to be jumping up and down from, 7 tons and being a little gun bunny. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Love those guys too. But I think what my initial impressions were, just tanks were just freaking cool, man. Like a modern marvel of technology and like wizardry going on in there, and I just wanted to learn about it, and I wanted to be a part of that.
That's awesome, man, and you did, and from a very early career at Second Tank, starting in 2003, where you remained for 4 years. You served in all the positions, to include section head, section leader, platoon sergeant, and you were, during this time, you were also promoted to corporal and then sergeant. But let's slow that down a little bit and kind of take that in pieces. Your first company, I think you were assigned to at Second Tanks was Company B, Bravo Company. Is that correct?
Yeah, yep, that was it.
All right. So how did it come to be? So here you are, fresh out of school, filled with piss and vinegar, and you show up at Second Tanks, and I know your personality, and everyone on the channel probably knows your personality. So, here you are, this really fiery, what were your PFC at the time, or you were a Lance Corporal?
I was PFC. Yeah.
All right. So there you are. So let's tell the story for us.
All right. So, I wasn't always as animated, as, but, when I first showed up, it was just kind of a deer in the headlights. I knew, even just breaking it down, as a Marine, it's big shoes to fill. So, even as a Marine, just as a Marine period, you've got big shoes to fill, just making sure that you live up to the title. And I think that that definitely, arguably with the tank community, I think that's rightfully, translates over there to being a tanker. You've got huge shoes to fill. You've got a lineage and a history that is really completely different than any other MOS out there. Mm-hmm. Not to say that the camaraderie is, somehow different. It's essentially all the same, but I mean, let's just be honest, man. Like tankers are weird. Like we're just weird creatures. We're just different. But when I first got there, it's just kind of like a deer in the headlights. Like be a sponge. I'm not going to say I was like the greatest junior Marine out there or whatever, but I tried to do what my NCOs told me to do, and I just tried to build off of that. Kind of a not necessarily a boot camp mentality of look at what everyone else is doing and then just follow suit, but it it kind of morphed into a little bit more than that. But I just tried to do what my NCOs told me to do, and thankfully I had some really really great NCOs. I could name a few, but I'd be leaving people out, and it would break my heart if I if I left anybody out.
Who were some of the leaders? Like not so many. I mean, obviously, the NCOs, there's a ton of them. But who were some of the most impactful leaders of during this early stage at Bravo Company?
Okay, this is way back. This is like 19-year-old, 20-year-old Ian. Okay. My first company commander was Captain Harding. I don't remember too much, but I do remember his replacement was Captain Youngblood, which I believe is now Colonel Youngblood.
Yes.
And I would say, as far as the commissioned officer side, he was kind of my first exposure of kind of like, wow, that guy knows what's going on. Like, guy was he was a gunfighter. I mean, he was firm but fair in all of his leadership for the company. But I didn't really have a lot of interaction with him because I was PFC and Lance Corporal Murray. So I'll talk about the staff NCOs. And one of my first platoon sergeants was Gunny Dixon. I know he's not a gunny anymore, but he kind of set me straight early on, and I'll be forever thankful. And I don't even know if he remembers this, but I remember it. So I got about like 2 or 3 speeding tickets in a pretty short amount of time, and rightfully so. Gunny Dixon was kind of done with that, and he let me know he was done with it, and I didn't get any speeding tickets after that. So just his demeanor and his leadership. He was one of the ones that definitely started me on the path of like, hey, this ain't it. Whatever you're doing, on Lobo, that ain't it.
Mm-hmm.
So then my next platoon sergeant, I am absolutely indebted to this man, and I don't even know if he knows that I hold him in this high regard, but old Gunny Lecky, he was the guy that kind of really put things in perspective for me. And I was his gunner on my first deployment, and it was great. It was a great experience. I hated him at the time, as you can probably understand. You're with somebody for so long that you turn into a family, and sometimes you snap at each other, and you say things that you don't really mean, but you're stuck inside that metal box for so long with your fellow brothers that you let the anger out a little bit. But no, Gunny Lecky on that deployment was, I mean, I can't say enough about the guy. If I was to say there was one person that shaped my mentality as a tanker, it was probably him. And what he instilled in me early and often was tank comes first, always. And I could do my Gunny Lecky impression. maybe a little bit later, but but he was he never yelled. If he did, it was really, really bad. But honestly, I can't remember any time that he ever yelled.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have to. He commanded that respect from everyone. And I wish I could thank him to his face, but I think he's down south in Jamaica right now, having a sweet time down there. But no, I think a lot of my success as far as work ethic and prioritizing the things, putting the most important things first. And in our aspect, it was the tank. Tank come first.
Yeah.
Good to go, Gunny.
Yep, I had that too. Master Guns Daniel, as you remember, horse saddle man.
Absolutely.
Saddle. No, so that first deployment was obviously in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. It stems from February 2005 until October 2005, and then you very quickly came back, now a sergeant, and deployed once again to OIF with Charlie Company, Calamity Company now, from 2006 to 2007, and you got bounced around a lot during this deployment in the different billets. From a gun truck vehicle commander to a gunner, and then ultimately to a tank commander. And you'd mentioned earlier about the wide-eyed PFC showing up. Well, that was me as well. The only difference was by this point you were an NCO, so you were actually one of my NCOs along with Chris and Kevin and those guys that I looked up to and I kind of fed off of and certainly followed in suit as best as I could. But I think you were probably one of the first ones, you and McKinney, maybe to call me Pickle. So I think you guys kind of coined the whole thing with Pickle. But let's talk about Charlie Company for a moment.
All right. Well, initially when I came over to Charlie, I had probably one of the best gunners in the Marine Corps, and you probably know him very well. Old Wild Bill Sowards.
Mm-hmm.
We still talk to this day, and I will tell you, him being my gunner, I really wish we could have deployed together. He had some medical stuff he had to, get addressed, so he couldn't make the deployment. But he was it, man. Like, he was just a good dude, and he knew when to, he knew the difference between business and pleasure, and So we actually chopped over together as a TC gunner combo initially, but as time progressed, we kind of got moved around a little bit, personnel, requirements of the company. So understandable. But yeah, man, I wonder what would have happened if me and old Wild Bill were able to deploy together. But no, that was a really special company. We had a lot of heavy hitters, and I'm going to talk about Chris Jules, but I think that's a little bit later on in the conversation. But we had Gunny Dixon. He came back. We had old Gunny Pitsley. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the platoon sergeants were Dixon, Pitsley, and Jules, right?
That's right.
I mean, if ever there was an all-star cast of platoon sergeants, I haven't heard of it.
Well, I mean, you could break it down with the platoon commanders, platoon sergeants, the two tanks. I mean, that company was like you said, it was something special, and it was my first company, so I'm really partial to it. But having spent time in both battalions and kind of on the dark side, as well as, it was a special company, because everyone was kind of part of that, went off and I mean, everyone did great things. Even the guys that got out and made civilian careers. I mean, and the thing is, a lot of us still stay in touch, which is crazy, and it's how many years later? I mean, it's 2006, and that's still my family. That's still my brothers, and I agree with you. So yeah, I had Gunny Jules on early on in the interview process, and I told him a story about the first time that Chris and I hit Chris Campos, this is Chris and I hit an IED like very first day out, like very first freaking trip. And, you know, I looked at Gunny and he's like, you good? I'm like, yeah, man, I'm good. And I was good. I was good because I knew where I was supposed to be where I was supposed to be. And things were good. I mean, it was, you know, and, you know, you had already kind of had that first deployment. So you had your teeth cut and you came over, you know, like you said later.
No, initially I was with headquarters, with Sterla, another fantastic
Phenomenal.
individual.
Yep.
Love him to death. Learned a hell of a lot from that guy too. Man, oh man. And then I moved over to Red Platoon.
So yeah, I mean, I knew that Jules, you know, having Gunny Jules there, I knew everything was going to be straight, just because, you know, he, like you said, he and Gunny Dixon, they both, you know, all the Gunnies of that, and even the staff sergeants of that whole company commanded respect, because a lot of them, you know, a lot of them were combat veterans already. I mean, a lot of them had done the push, done Phantom Fury. So we kind of fell in as junior Marines under a, you know, a leadership umbrella that knew what it was like. And they did a real good job, in my opinion, prepping us and getting us ready as junior Marines to go out there and do God's work.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
So you'd mentioned you started out with headquarters company, or part of headquarters. And Sterla, Staff Sergeant Sterla, he was a staff sergeant at the time, right? Or was he promoted already?
No, he was a staff sergeant then.
Yeah. So another just phenomenal. I think the leadership principle to draw out from all those guys, having, you know, spent some time thinking about it, is that they took pride in what they did. So
I mean, they, like you said, they commanded that respect, and they expected a lot. They expected a lot of the Marines that they were in charge of, and not really. I mean, they were in charge of everybody. You know, there wasn't just like the, you know, hey, you're a blue platoon Marine. No, it extended to everybody. Like they corrected anybody and everybody, and also they taught anybody and everybody. So I mean, just their knowledge base and their willingness to give that knowledge to all of us and to all the Marines in the company. I mean, I think that says a lot, not only about them as Marines and as professionals, but as men, as human beings. They're just great guys, you know?
And I think when you crossed over and you came into Red, I think that kind of set the stage, and you know, you fell in under Gunny Jules, of course, and you know, it was an opportunity for you to expand and do some tanking. You know, I don't think you were too disappointed moving from a gun truck to a gunner seat in the middle of combat.
No, not in the slightest. I was as happy as could be with that move, especially given who I was gunning for. I mean, let's just be completely honest. I'm gonna embarrass the crap out of him. Chris Jules. I mean, the guy's a legend. Right. He's a legend. Everybody knows this guy, right? But they know he's a freaking warfighter, right? And we talk about big shoes you got to fill. Like, okay, so yeah, you know, I've got a previous deployment. That's cool and all, but you know, Gunny Lucky, warfighter, you know, in his own right. It's fantastic guys that I was fortunate enough to, you know, to live down in the gunner's hole between their legs. But no, like these guys, you know, Chris Jules, one of the greatest human beings and the greatest teachers and mentors in my life. And I would say between, you know, the Gunny Dixons and the Gunny Leckies and now the Gunny Jules is, you know, he was kind of the not the final guiding light, but one of the last ish guiding lights that got me on the straight and narrow. And he knew what I was capable of, even if I didn't know what I was capable of. And he expected a lot out of me. And I kind of think about, you know, great leaders, you know, over the course of any time in history. You know, I think the most effective leaders are the ones that you want to perform for because you don't want to let them down.
Right.
because you hold them in such high regard, that you would do anything for them, because you don't want, you want to accomplish the mission, obviously, but you don't want to let one of your mentors, one of your teachers down. And Gunny Jules was absolutely one of those people in my life.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's a great way of putting it. And like you said, a lot of those guys didn't yell. I mean, yeah, a lot of them did, but really it wasn't the yelling that hurt. It was the disappointment, and
Oh yeah.
I'm going to tell a sea story. I usually don't on the channel, but do you recall whenever Camp Fallujah was attacked by the rockets and I was sleeping in the rack? I think you may not have been there. You may have not chopped over yet.
I don't think I was there.
But Chris Campos was about ready to kill me. Because him and Gunny Jules thought for sure I was dead. And like there's sirens going off and there's rocket, and hey, rockets hit the camp. I mean, it was a pretty gnarly night.
Yeah.
And I literally slept through the entire thing. And they never checked my room. They checked the bunkers. They checked, out by the tank. They checked everywhere. And they're like, where the hell's Pickle? Yeah, I was dead in the rack, man. I was absolutely sleeping in the rack. And Campos walks in. He's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm sleeping. He's like, dude, we just got attacked. Are you kidding me? Yeah, he was so angry at me. I didn't think he talked to me for like 2 days after that. But
oh man. Oh, good Lord. I mean, I vaguely remember that. No, come to think of it, I remember, we were all looking for you. But hey, you were Chris's. You belong to Campos, so by God, he was going to find you, and he found you.
Yeah. All right. So what other sea stories you got before we move on?
Oh man. I think we could bring it back to our section.
All right.
So I chopped over to you all a little bit later in the deployment, but I think we had probably a good 3 months together, 2 to 3 months together. And I can honestly say that was probably some of the most fun,
yes,
I've ever had, both, I mean, on the tank and off the tank. And I think it goes back to the people I was around. You got on our crew is Schmeeds. Well, Schmiedler was the driver. Cole, he was the loader. I was gunning. Chris Jules was TCing. Your crew, you had Hawkins
and
Coder.
Yep.
And you had old Chris Campos. And I tell you what, I think you know how close Chris Campos and I are, were and are. And I think coming over there, we talk about guys that had like huge impacts, on our careers. And I don't think Chris knows this either, but I'm going to embarrass him too. I will say that Chris Campos is probably one of the best human beings on the face of the earth. And my brother from another mother, I don't think he knows how much of a positive impact that he's had on my life. I mean, Chris, inside and out. He walks the straight and narrow. He walks the line, and he does it in a way that you want to follow his lead. Right. He's the classic lead by example. And what's more is he's super smart. Like, he knew the tank, in and out. Is an awesome tanker. But like I said before, he was a great tanker, outstanding Marine, but he's an even better human being.
I agree 100%.
I can't thank him enough for him just being him and being in my life. So, but yeah, being around guys like you and Chris and old Gunny Jules, is fantastic. And I know you brought up Master Guns Daniel a little bit ago. Got a little bit of history with him too. It goes back a little ways, but That's all right. So he was a tank leader that of the company that ripped with us
Mm.
in 07. And I had never. First off, don't ever get Brian Daniel and Chris Jules together. It's a recipe for. I mean, you will laugh so hard that you'll pee your pants. It's hilarious. So he did a little left seat, right seat on our tank, and he was in the loader spot. And as we know, old Top Daniel at the time, he had, when he had to go,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Pickle, throw me a paper.
cocky. So well, this is old number one, and he's in the loader spot, and he's trying. They had the groin protector on the interceptor vest back then, and he's like, he's a big old hulking guy as it is. So he's in the loader's position on top of that, and he's trying to finagle, things to come out so he can pee in a bottle, and he ends up pissing all over the loader station, all over our cooler that had Red Bulls, water, in the loader spot. And I look over, I'm like, Top, what are you doing? You're pissing all over the turret. What are you doing? And I've never heard that man laugh so hard or so long in my entire life. And he's just like, it looks like he's about to throw up. He's laughing so hard. And then it was contagious. We were absolutely dead inside that tank, like just laughing. It was contagious. We were probably a little stir crazy at that point. But I guarantee you, if there could have been a division of insurgents out there, right in like 100 meters in front of the tank, confirmed, and they would have overrun us, because I could not stop laughing.
I'm that ineffective.
I was done. But a lot of other stories kind of come to mind, but no, that's probably one of the highlights, if you want to call it a highlight.
Right.
But again, just great dudes,
I still can't listen to Alice in Chains without thinking about being on top of that tank.
Oh, Rooster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Old Rooftop Hero.
Right.
Rooftop Hero. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, great times, man.
Christopher Walken too.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, I was telling somebody the other day about Meow, and how Meow got to a point on the radio that got so bad that I believe there was actually an order that came down that said, because I know in firefights, some people have used Meow in actual, no kidding, firefights, like bullets flying both directions, and there was a Meow that came across the radio. So yeah, it's just little things like that just make me laugh, man. Yeah,
those little things that get you through it.
All right, so August 2007. First time you go to be an instructor at tank school. This time is Fort Knox.
Yep.
And you're there as a crewman instructor, part of the detachment, and you're there. This is also the same time that you graduated basic instructor course and M1A1 Master Gunner course. And we've already had Master Gunners on here, so I'm not going to do a whole lot, but Master Gunner course is probably one of the most, if not the most impressive course that the Marine Corps offers as far as tactician. And people that don't know, Master Gunners are basically the warrant officers of tanks, because we don't have warrant officers. So everything that is technically requirement for the tank, weapon systems, fire control systems, some of the optics, and a lot of the overall maintenance, all the way up to level 2, some level 3 level maintenance. The Master Gunner is an expert in all of that. And actually, a Master Gunner will go far beyond that if the mechanics will let them. But usually at that point, someone will say, "Hey, yeah, that's kind of our job." So, but, did I do a good enough job kind of explaining that role?
Absolutely. Never go full mic golf though.
Yeah.
Never go full mic golf.
And then curriculum administrator as well. And here you were promoted to the rank of staff sergeant in February 2009. And being that I didn't know you kind of during this time frame, I know obviously of you, but I'll let you kind of tell whatever stories or leadership principles or lessons that kind of come to mind during this period of time?
Yeah, so Fort Knox was fantastic. Uh, it was probably one of my favorite duty stations. It was during like I think the first 3 or 4 months I was there. My wife and I got married, so that was the start of something great. So I think I guess the common theme is just being around good dudes. I don't know. Spoiler alert, it's just being around good dudes all the time, which makes the job so much easier. When you're around guys like Britt Higgins, let's see, Fisher, Anasek, Ellis. They were Army instructors that were there, but I mean, they were ours. They were ours. They were just honorary Marines. Great dudes, great tankers. Ramson, O'Day, Cortez, Guerrero. Yeah, I'm gonna miss guys, but the dudes that were down there, the fellow instructors, that's what made that place so much fun. And I think that's probably why it's my favorite duty station. But I think what I took most from being an instructor at Knox was having to mature very fast. Not that I was, completely immature before, but I mean, as when you're a younger guy, I think I was 23, 24 when I got there. I was still young. Being around those guys, you got to up your game, and I would say I matured a good bit there, and I learned an awful lot, because you got guys from first tanks, second tanks, cross pollinating, as instructors, and everybody working together to build the future of our community, which is those entry level tank crewmen. So did a lot of maturing there. Made some mistakes along the way, but learned a whole heck of a lot there. And I think that's, Chris Campos and I, we went there together. We PCS there the same day. And I think that's really when I started to try and refine the whole, lead by example. That's kind of what I tried to do, early on, but sometimes you just don't know how to do it, or you just have a hard time finding your groove. And I think at Fort Knox, that really being around all those guys, like I said, up in your game, and knowing what kind of leader that I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to be that guy that that led by example. I want to be the change, within the community. I want to, these junior Marines, these privates, PFCs that are coming through. I want to show them what right looks like. Right. Because to be quite honest, it goes back to the big shoes you got to fill. Guys like Jules and Pitsley and Hillard and all these legends across the way. I know I'm leaving a whole bunch of guys out, but you got to fill those shoes, and who's going to do it? So it's got to be the guys that they raised, that they mentored. Right. So I kind of took that to heart at Fort Knox, and I really tried to build myself into the leader that I wanted to be.
Well, I would tell you that when I got there in 2008, and this time as an officer, having you and Campos there, it was great. And I owe you guys a real thank you, because you guys treated me with respect that a second lieutenant should have. You could have absolutely torpedoed my career early on by telling my fellow officers some of the shenanigans that I was known for, but you guys really did not. it was pretty cool because there were times where we were 100% professional, and there were times that, you know, we kind of weren't, and it was still within the realm of, you know, student and instructor basis. And like you said, that speaks absolute, you know, to Campos and his professionalism. And I mean, the dude's a machine. I mean, he, you know, things are a certain way, and that's the way you do it, and that's the way it gets done. But yeah, it was fun coming back. It was fun coming back, and you know, it was one of those things that I was kind of apprehensive about. And you guys very quickly said, "Hey, you know, things are different. Yeah, it's different. Like you crossed into the dark side," which, you know, which I am going to say something on the air here, because I remember you busted my stones for a long time, and you were one of the ones that was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" That's why when the message came out and I saw your name on it, I was like, "Really? Absolute 110% hypocrite." How many years later, he's a hypocrite? But no.
Oh, well, you know. Hi, pot. I'm kettle.
All right. So after Knox, at the time, now Staff Sergeant Murray, you transfer out to 1st Tank Battalion, where you're now assigned once again to Company C, only this time as a platoon sergeant and company master gunner. You know, I think a couple of the guys came on here before and talked about, you know, the similarities and differences between the tank battalions. And I know we swapped the guidons during this time period where, you know, if you had homesteaded, you know, homesteading was a bad term back then.
Yeah.
You know, hey, if you're east, go west. If west, go east. You did that, you know. So you know, you made the transition out west. What were some of those similarities and differences? And I think, spoiler alert, it's going to be good dudes, but I'm gonna kind of leave it at that. So you get out the 1st Tanks, you know, coming from East Coast, coming from you know, schoolhouse in between.
Yeah.
What are your impressions of beautiful 29 Palms?
Ooh, you know, it's not Lejeune. There's minimal green there, but now, you know, so my wife was actually, she was 6 months pregnant with our first when we made the trip out there. And, you know, a conversation for another time, but I tell you, she'll grow wherever she's planted. She never complains. You know, she's the perfect wife. You know, she was, when I initially told her, like, yeah, honey, we're heading to 1st Tanks. Where's that? 29 Palms. Where's that? It's in California. So on the drive in, it was kind of a culture shock, but never complained. You know, she's always up for a new adventure, and she got a new adventure out there. But I would say the difference between the battalions, I would say because of the high op tempo, you know, 1st Tanks, you're supporting everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're supporting the, you know, the IOC classes that go through, the ITX or whatever acronym that they want to use, Mojave Viper, ITX, whatever. I mean, you're supporting everything out there. And I will say my initial reaction was, man, I better up my, you know, my tactical game, you know, my maneuvering and stuff like that. Because to be honest, like we never did, you know, any open desert stuff, you know, in Iraq. So you know, we always did urban stuff, you know, tank infantry integration. So that's where I kind of quickly realized that although I felt very strongly about, you know, being a solid crewman and keeping the tank up and being good, really good at maintenance and that type of thing, I would say that the differences between the coasts, at least at that point, from my perspective, was the dudes at 1st Tanks, like those dudes knew how to operate, like because they were out all the time. They had no choice, you know. And I would say the guys on the East Coast, you know, because of, you know, training area constraints and you know, and those types of things, you know, where they excelled was maintenance and keeping vehicles up and running. And again, that's just my perspective. You know, that's what I viewed as kind of like the strengths between, you know, the two battalions or the big, you know, the greatest differences.
No, I think it's a great answer. I'll take it one step further, just from being a coyote up on the hill and watching the different battalions come through. It was very funny because we talk about dispersion. Dispersion between the tanks was a big thing. You get the guys from first tanks that when they went out and dispersed, they were literally covering like a click or a click and a half. The guys from second tanks were like 30 meters apart from each other. And it's like, no, man, spread out. Like you got an entire corridor here. Like, you got to open the desert. You can talk and communicate across the entire thing. Like you kind of need to open that up a little bit. So no, your answer is a great answer. And it's a very good way of, putting the kind of the thought in place. Company master gunner. So, how many ranges did you run?
Ooh, you put me on the spot. It's 4, 5. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, during my time, I didn't run solely Charlie Company ranges. I think I ran 3 or 4 Charlie ranges while I was there, and then actually Campos and we actually went down and we helped out. I think a reserve company or platoon down in Pendleton, 409 Alpha, I think it was. I would say while I was at first tanks, I think probably close to 6 or 7 ranges.
Okay.
That I ran. Could be wrong. It was a long time ago, but no, that was the very first range that I ever ran was terrible. I can say that with all confidence. It was terrible. I was a company Mike Golf and a platoon sergeant. So getting pulled in 2 directions on 2 very, very important billets, it was probably one of the more challenging things that I've had to do in my career, trying to figure out how to delegate, who to delegate to do what while, I was up in the tower, or, it was really, really hard. But I will say, well, Tony Hines, he really set me on the right path as far as planning and, planning the range and being a good, solid, Mike Golf out there. I owe a lot to him as far as, he really helped me out a lot to get me on the right path and to set me up for success.
And that success continued all the way through to your deployment. This time, though, you changed theaters. Now we're going to Helmand Province in Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom with 3rd Combat Engineer Battalion. And interestingly enough, a new platform, this time the platoon sergeant as for the assault breacher vehicle. And you left in October of 2011. So what was it like going over to 3rd CEB and working with those guys?
Oh, that is, you talk about a culture shock or a stark difference between communities. Go from being a tanker from, 2003 all the way to what was it, 2011, and then you just go into, the engineer community where they just kind of do things just a little bit different, different kind of mindset on some things, but ultimately, it's probably one of the best platoons I ever had. We had, I think we had like 7 different MOSs in the platoon. I mean, we had HE mechs, HE operators. We had tankers that were the ABV drivers. We had 1371s/72s, ABV operators and combat engineers. We had a corpsman, we had, radio operators. No, I mean, we were like a hodgepodge, it seemed like. But I just kind of quickly found my niche over there. I found my place, and I knew I just kind of tried to figure out what the intent was, how to do this thing. Because, I mean, I'd seen an ABV at the schoolhouse. But I'd never really been on it. I mean, it's a lesser vehicle. Let's just be honest. It's no tank, and it never will be. But just kind of learning a new platform, learning a new set of tactics, and I mean, the maintenance was pretty much the same as it was for a tank, but no, it was different over there. It was different, but just kind of figure it out after about a month or so.
And you did, and then you returned in April 2012, and this time went back to Charlie Company to continue service as the company master gunner and platoon sergeant, all the way up until January 2013, where then now you went back to tank school. And this time it was a different tank school. It's now Fort Benning, Georgia, post the shift. And I know the schools were very different. Having spent time at both myself, they were very different. And he served as Army Basic Officer Leader, course instructor, senior instructor, where you instructed not only Marines, but also the Army foreign military officers on the tactical and technical employment of the M1A1 tank. So now this is kind of your payback tour. You know, you've taken all this experience up to this point. You're pretty senior staff sergeant, and now you're going back, and it's your turn now to really put pen to paper and you know, the elbow grease in the work to train. Not, like I said, not just the Marines, but also, you know, every officer that kind of comes through there. Huge billet, huge responsibility, and you did it really well. Something to be very proud of. What kind of thoughts do you have, and you know, where did you pull your biggest strengths from in order to do this job so successfully?
Oh, well, that billet was probably my favorite billet that I've ever held. It was one of the most rewarding by far. You know, by and large, all my students were fantastic, you know, students. Let's see, what did I pull from it? I mean, just being around officers, I wouldn't say that they tainted me, and you know, they kind of you know, kind of pointed me in the direction to cross over to the officer side. But no, it was just you know, I found it to be like one of the like culminating billets within the tank community. Like, so tank officers, you're not on the tank all the time, or you're not on the tank as much as the enlisted side of the house. And you know, I knew that, you know, growing up, that you know, Louis not around a whole lot because he's probably looking at a map, planning something somewhere, or getting yelled at by the company commander. You know, that was just junior enlisted Ian. But I kind of looked at it as my opportunity to give back, like you were saying. It's my opportunity to give everything that I know, that I have inside, you know, inside my brain and in my heart, you know, as both a tanker and as a Marine, you know, to these lieutenants coming in, you know, and the majority of them, you know, were fresh, you know, fresh out of college, you know, TBS, and then straight there. So they didn't have the you know, the prior experience, you know, as some of the prior enlisted guys that came through there. But I just kind of, you know, made it my duty. Like, what do I know? What can I teach them that will make them successful platoon commanders? Like, how can they be force multipliers in the fleet? How can they not be, you know, that guy that just shows up, you know, at SP and puts his comm helmet on and says, "Okay, let's go." Like, I didn't want to build that kind of armor officer. You know, I wanted a guy that at least knew a lot about a little. You know what I mean? Or knew a little about a lot. That's what it knew a little about a lot. So, you know, I probably went further in depth on some on some classes than you know, than I should have. But you know, I just wanted to give them the knowledge. I just wanted to give them the tools to be successful, and to be able to lead their Marines effectively on that tank.
And then it happened. Then in March 2015, you were selected for the Marine Enlisted and Commissioning Program. And like I said before, I chuckled when I read the message and saw your name on it. Although I knew that based on everything you've gone through and who you were professionally and everything you put into tanks and your military career, that you were going to be successful. There was no doubt. You attended Officer Candidate School in June of 2015. And then I will say that I was kind of surprised because you came back and promoted to the rank of Gunnery Sergeant, and you reported back to Benning. So you kind of had a period of time there where you served as the Squadron Master Gunner for 116 Cavalry Regiment. So how was that going to OCS and coming back? Did anybody kind of give you a hard time, or was it just part of the job?
It's the whole, I hadn't commissioned yet, so I didn't quite get it that bad yet.
Okay.
But it was the whole, I feel like it's the obligatory, oh, you're going over to the dark side. No, I mean, I never really, just some ball busting here or there.
Sure.
It was all good hearted though. Nothing really changed much. It's just I took a 3-month vacation, learning how to not stroke out in the Virginia summers. But no, nothing really changed much. I just came back in a little bit better shape is all.
And then November 2015, you went to the Naval Reserve Officer Training Corps. What surprised me, Ohio State, because being a Nebraska fan, I mean, I figured that as much Huskers gear as you have and how much you love Nebraska, that you would certainly have gone there. I mean, couldn't believe that you actually went to Ohio State. I mean, it was probably what, the last school on your list?
No. So to be quite honest, I know you're probably supposed to apply to a bunch of schools. Maybe, I don't know. I only applied to one.
Nebraska, right?
No, I only applied to Ohio State.
I'm joking. You've loved Ohio State for as long as I can possibly imagine. And when you wore the shirt and I saw that you were going there, I'm like, yep, the stars are aligning, and he's probably happy as a clam right now going to the school that you certainly praise their expertise and professionalism for all the time. But no, man, that was awesome, and I'm sure being a Buckeye is pretty sweet.
Oh, it's great, man. It's great. And then, it kind of goes back to, family tradition. I got a lot of family members that they're Ohio State alums.
Right.
That's actually where my dad commissioned out of in 1976. So he's a Buckeye alum as well from the ROTC program. My mom went there, my sister, my brother-in-law, who's a MESEPer as well. A long line of Buckeyes. So there was no choice. I was raised a Buckeye, so that's where I was going.
And I apologize for not calling it the Ohio State. My mistake on that one. So
yes, please correct yourself.
All right. So after going through NROTC, you then served. Well, while you were there, you served as a platoon sergeant and company commander for the Buckeye Company. So you did extremely well there, and ultimately commissioned in May 5th. You earned your bachelor's of arts in history, and then accepted your commissioning as a lieutenant. And you were officially indoctrinated into the dark side. At this point, as normal lieutenants do, you went to the basic school here in Virginia and did really well at TBS, and then went off and received your orders to 8th Marine Regiment, 2nd Marine Division at Camp Lejeune. So you went back to Camp Lejeune, this time as a newly commissioned lieutenant.
There was I checked in January, mid-January, and then I did a little bit of OJT while I was there. And then I think in February or March of that year, I went to logistics officer's course over at Camp Johnson. And then right after I got back, we went to ITX. So yeah, it was kind of a whirlwind. It was a pretty stressful time, PCS in it, because at that point we had 2 children. My wife and I had our 2 children. And it was definitely a different PCS. It's a lot more hurried, and then there's the whole, kind of the officer thing, like, hey, figure it out, like,
right.
Accomplish the mission, like, got it. So there's a lot of late nights and grinding out at ITX. Had some great mentors out there that kind of continued on the continued me on the path to being and becoming a better leader. At least I feel.
As a motor transport
just kind of the
officer,
embodiment.
as a motor transport officer, what similarities did you see? With I know there are quite a few. I mean, an MTO is certainly logistic heavy, gear heavy, accountability heavy. So from what I think I know about the two billets, it seems like there's a lot of similarities and a lot of crossover. Did you experience that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And my experiences as a tank crewman directly correlated how I trained, or how I gave my intent to the Marines in my platoon. Just like Gunny Lucky back in the day, tank come first, Roger. Hey, trucks come first, boys. We're not going home until you put the trucks to bed, and that's the bottom line. I tried to instill that in them. They did a fantastic job. Just having that prior, tank crewman background, kind of, channeled me to be a good motor transport officer, as far as, legit planning for, logistics, convoys or, what have you, but taking care of the vehicles, I feel like was a big help.
And then while you were at 28, like you previously mentioned, 2019 participated in the 26 MU, and this was a really interesting time to be out on the ship because if my memory serves me correctly, that's when the world kind of came to a halt due to all this craziness going on.
Yeah.
What was that like? What did you expect, and then what did it turn out to be?
Well, from everything, so I was fortunate-ish. So I didn't have to do a lot of the workup because I was over at headquarters, 8th Reg. So I didn't chop over until very, very late in the workup for the MU. And I guess from everything that everybody was saying was like, yeah, we're going to go, to Morocco, and then we're going to go to Greece and basically kind of, work our way a little bit west around, the Gibraltar, Spain, and then end up in Norway, kind of like as the culminating exercise at the end of the MU. The computer determined that was a lie. None of that happened. We got within sight of the Moroccan shore, and then we turned right back around. And then we passed through the Strait of Gibraltar, and the reason for that was Soleimani, the Iranian general that was killed by a drone strike, and we were kind of like at a heightened alert, and they wanted they wanted the BLT in the Persian Gulf. They wanted us in the AO. So within, I think, 2.5 weeks of us being underway, we did the translant, and then we backed up a couple of miles, and then we went straight through the the Suez and the Hoa, and we ended up in the Arabian Sea, or was it the Persian Gulf, or somewhere around there. But yeah, from what I expected to be kind of like maybe a Libo cruise, maybe, hopefully, did not turn into a Libo cruise in the slightest. I think we only stopped at about 2 places the entire time.
Man, yeah. That's one that you can't kind of redo. Sorry about that. And I will say, Ian, this has been great, man. We've gone too long not chatting, and that's kind of my fault. But I have kept very close tabs on everything you've done. And although I'm going to bust your balls about being a Nebraska fan, everyone knows it's a lie. Super proud of you attending Ohio State and everything you've done up to this point. Your future is bright with over there in logistics as a logistics officer, and obviously your upbringing as a tanker, I think, is kind of attributed to that. And I thank you. I thank you for coming on here. Thank you for making the time. As somebody that came up through tanks and now has a different perspective, obviously you did that prior to the divestment. What advice do you have for anybody that's kind of going through? I think, like I already said, I think by now, a lot of people have already made the decisions and wheels are kind of in motion.
Right.
You know, the way I kind of look at this is somebody down the road might pull this video out and look at tanks, you know, from a historical perspective. What do you have, you know, for the current community and then kind of for future viewers as well?
You know, and when I first heard about the divestment, it broke my heart. You know, I'm not going to get into the details or anything like that, but one of my first questions to myself was like, what are all those guys going to do? What are they going to do with all those tankers? And you know, I would say the tank community, as you know, as we all know, as all of us tankers, our community is so incredibly small and so tight knit. It's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but you could probably scale it down to like 3 degrees of Kevin Bacon. I mean, like everybody knows everybody, right? And I would argue that our community is stronger now than it's ever been before. And I think it is due to the divestment. And, you know, we're coming together, you know, as a family, and we're just, you know, just being there for one another. You know, you know, for lack of a better word, it sucks. You know, we love our tanks. We love our hogs. And, you know, and I can probably say for a lot of people, you know, we lived to maybe take lives, but, you know, save the lives of our brothers on the deck.
Right.
You know, in our situations, you know, our experiences in Fallujah, you know, I think we prided ourselves, you know, on being that kind of guardian angel. You know, when they called tanks, they knew that either something was about to go down, or the insurgents didn't feel like playing anymore, and they just went away. So we you know, we were kind of that, you know, that backstop, that safety. But as far as going forward, you know, anybody in the tank community, whether it's old or you only got to spend, you know, a week before you found out you had to re-des or get out.
Right.
You're part of this community. You know, you are part of this family, and this family is going to live on. You know, I got news for everybody. You know, it's, you know, anybody that's a tanker, you know, I will call you my brother and sister. It kind of goes back to people, man. It is, the people make it worth it, honestly. The things that you learned as a tanker, you know, whether it's, you know, making that tank go, like figuring it out on the fly, you know, having that, you know, that critical thinking mentality, you know, okay, what's wrong and how do I fix it?
Right.
I know personally that's probably one of the biggest things I took from being a tanker. You know, understanding the problem, you know, framing it, and figuring out where to go next. How do we fix the problem? And I will say that without a doubt, that being an 1812 is probably, you know, my proudest and most fulfilling achievement in my professional career. I love tanks. I always will. But, you know, I'll always be here for anybody that wants to talk and tell sea stories. And, you know, I always make time to share a beer with my fellow tankers.
I hear that, man. That was a great way of putting that. Thank you. Thank you. That really, really was fantastic. I thank you for making the time. Like I said before coming on here, it's very cool having somebody that knows my history and I can call a friend. And I appreciate the fact you didn't tell the spoon smack story. That was, you know, that definitely showed some real restraint. So I appreciate that. To the viewers, hey, thank you all for continuing to make the channel successful. If you have not already done so, please do subscribe. The subscriptions continue to grow, and it's through the subscriptions the channel maintains momentum, and more folks are able to see these videos, because at some point YouTube is going to go ahead and start, you know, promoting these as well. So thank you for keeping our community strong. And Ian, thanks for real, man. Thanks for coming on here.
Hey, thanks, brother. I really appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Semper Fi.
Semper Fi, brother.